All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming live from our Joburg office. Good morning and welcome back to the opening bell with myself, Tshepo and Ashley. And this is brought to you by TD Markets and TD Markets Academy every Mondays to Fridays at 9, streaming live on YouTube. But trust and hope that everyone is well this Tuesday morning. All right, let's get right into it, guys. So today, global markets are focused on the US inflation data. All right. And now this whole week, they are also focused on the Fed leadership transition, obviously the ongoing US-Iran tension, as well as the Trump and Xi summit. All right. What's making headlines today is the US inflation report that is coming out at 2:30 South African time. All right. And on that note, join us live on YouTube at 2 p.m. We are going live at 2 p.m. on YouTube as we will be looking at the inflation report. All right. So what do we know about this upcoming inflation report? Well, higher energy costs from the Middle East disruptions are likely pushing, or rather they are pushing readings higher, which could influence the Fed policy expectation, right? A hotter than expected print may pressure bonds and weigh on rate cut hopes, while a softer reading could support risk assets, right? Markets are pricing in potential volatility around this release. All right. So at the moment, the yearly inflation print in the US is 3.4%. It jumped from 2.4%. It went all the way up to 3.4%. Now the markets are forecasting 3.7%, right? And this is because of the elevated energy costs or elevated oil prices. All right. So markets are already pricing in a volatility around that print and around that release. All right. So yeah, so this is going to come out at 2:30 this afternoon, CPI. Tomorrow we've got PPI as well. So this week is all about inflation data. All right. Now, looking at what's happening in Iran, all right, peace talks have stalled. President Trump rejected Iran's latest response to a US proposal as totally unacceptable, raising fears that conflict could drag on and keep disrupting shipping, right? This has driven oil prices higher, boosting energy stocks, but pressuring sectors like airlines. Markets remain resilient overall, but are sensitive to headline risk. All right. So what's happening in the Middle East is obviously affecting inflation, and it's pressurizing inflation in the US, right? That's why we are likely going to see a higher print or a higher reading. All right. So that is the US inflation data that's going to come out today. So keep a very close eye on that. The markets will be moving. We will be going live at 2 p.m. All right. Now, also, what's making headlines this week is the leadership transition within the FOMC, right? The Fed leadership transition, right? Which is a key market focus this week, with Jerome Powell's term as chair officially ending this Friday. So this Friday is the day that the current chair of the Fed or FOMC term is coming to an end, right? So Powell's role, his 4-year term as chair, like I said, it expires this week on Friday. He has announced he will step down from the leadership position, but will remain on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, right? His governor term runs up until 2028. He plans to serve for a period of time to be determined, citing ongoing legal or political pressure and investigation, right, into Fed building renovations, right? The DOJ has been investigating the Fed over the building renovations, so that those investigations are still ongoing. As a result, even though his term as Fed chair is going to come to an end, he will still remain on the Board of Governors up until the investigations have been concluded, right? And his term in the Board of Governors ends in January 2028. All right. And then now you've got Kevin Wash, who's coming in, who's going to be the new Fed chair, right? He's the president's nominee to succeed Powell as chair. Wash, a former Fed governor, right, cleared the Senate Banking Committee, I think it was last week, right? The full Senate has advanced the nomination this week with a final confirmation vote expected potentially by Friday or in the coming days. So it has already been confirmed before the Senate Banking Committee that he's going to receive, Kevin Wash is going to receive votes for him to become the new Fed chair. And we know that Kevin Wash is President Trump's nominee. So he might have, he might be aligned with President Trump's preferences, all right? Like openness to crypto, like potentially, cutting rates and all of that, all right? So even with the change, the FOMC operates by committee. Powell's continued presence on the board could create an unusual dynamic, right? A former chair as a voting governor. So it might create an unusual dynamic. Rate decisions are expected to remain data dependent in the near term. All right. So this is basically what's making headlines this week. You've got the inflation data out of the US. You've got the Fed leadership transition. You also have President Trump and the Chinese President Summit, right? President Trump and Xi Summit. I think they're going to be talking about AI, that the tech industry, the tech sector, and all of that. All right. So that is basically what's making headlines this week. With regards to how the markets are moving right now, because of the FOMC later on today, right? Things might change. Right, things might change. So the markets remain as they are since yesterday. Ash went over the analysis yesterday with you guys. So nothing has changed really, right? The market is just creating structure. Nothing has changed really. I would say let's wait for the not the FOMC, but for the CPI data to come out, right? Because it might change structure. It might give us a different direction. So what we talk about this morning in terms of technical analysis might change later on, right? So we're gonna be doing the charts later on at 2 p.m. for the CPI, so do join us there. But in terms of the fundamentals, this is what's happening, all right? A busy week this week, so just keep a very close eye on these fundamentals. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the session for this morning, the opening bell. Hope you guys learned. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let's see what's going to happen throughout the day, throughout the week. And don't forget, if you want to open up an account with us, that is the website, www.tdmarkets.com. The email is care@tdmarkets.com. All right. Have a good one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. We will see you later on YouTube at 2 p.m. today. All right. Have a good one. Cheers, guys.